Okay, good morning. So we begin at 5B towards the bottom, about 5 lines from the bottom. Let's see. Um, uh, Actually, we'll go up to Gufa. We'll go up to about 10 lines from the bottom. Pick it up there. So Gufa, we said before, Amar Shmuel, Shnaim Shadanu Dinam Dim. Two judges on a in a court. If you're supposed to have three, but if you had two, it works. It's considered a valid court proceeding. Elo Shanikra based in Chasuf, but we call it, it's insolent. Yasser Rav Nachman Kamar Lashmata. Rav Nachman was teaching this. Esvei Rav Nachman, so Rav asked, Afilu Shnaim Mazakin Shnaim Mechayvim, even if two judges say, guilty or innocent, and the third judge, the third judge says, I don't know what to say. So Yosifu Zayanim. So we should add on another judge because this judge is no longer a judge. He's like he won't rule. So that leaves us with a court of two. So you should add one on. V'isa, if it's the case that two judges works, even if it's you're not supposed to do it. So what do you need to add the third one on? Levu Kishnayim Shadanu. So you have a two judge court. So what? It still works. Where it says no Shani Hasam. It's different to Meikara adopted because they originally, impaneled three judges. They started this court was working with three judges, and now there's only two. Hacha lav adopted but in Shmuel's ruling, that wasn't the case, right? It's like you start off with two, so Shmuel says that's okay, but if you start off with three, you have to end with three. Esve, so we have another question. Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer, Hadin Bishlosha. The law is you should have three judges on the court. Upshar b'shnayim, and if you're doing a compromise, or I guess we could call it what's the word for when you agree not to sue in court, but you use arbitration. So whatever, if they work out a compromise, then that you can do with two. And by the way, it's better to have a compromise than a judgment. Sheshnayim Shadanu, if two people are on a court, two judges on the court, Baladin Yichon Laxabra, and then the people involved can say no deal, right? It's only a two-person court. I withdraw my application to the court, or I withdraw my submission to the authority of this court. Shnaim Shasup Shar, but if there's two people on a compromise panel, and you can't change your mind, right? That two is completely valid. So this also is against Shmuel, right? Because it sounds like if there's a court of two, it doesn't really have the same validity as a court of three. V'chitema, so you want to answer Pliga Rabbanan later of Shum Gamliel. Maybe the rabbis argue with Shum Gamliel. Rabbi Avo says Shnaim Shadan Divrei Kol and Yinaim Din. There's no argument. Rabbi Avo says everybody agrees. There's no two is no court. So Gemara says Gavra Karames. What you're telling me that Rabbi Avo disagrees with Shmuel? Like Shmuel clearly doesn't agree that everybody holds that two is invalid. Shmuel says two is valid, right? So like. That's not a question, right? So Shmuel argues for Riyavo. Okay, we have arguments all over the place. All right, Gufa. We said before, Amar Riyavo. Shnaim Shadon Dinim Amanos. Two people judge a case of torts, monetary law. Divrei Akol and Dinem Din doesn't work. Everybody says doesn't work according to Rabbi Avo. Ace for Rabbi Avo. So now we're questioning Rabbi Avo. How can you say that? Everybody says this. Dana Sadin, we have a Mishnah that says if you judge the case, and this is in the singular, if one judge judges a case, and he made a mistake, right? There's someone who's clearly liable, and the judge rules you're not liable, or vice versa. Or Timei Sator Tir Satame, he made a mistake in the law. Masha Asa, and we'll examine a little bit exactly what kind of mistake. Masha Asa Asoy Mishalim Veso. It's a good judgment, right? It's a not a good judgment, a valid judgment. It has the approval of this judge and so therefore of the court. But Mishalim Veso, but this judge, because he made a mistake and cost somebody money, he has to pay it back. So Gemara says, oh, so looks like even the single judge is good, right? Gemara says, oh, okay. if the both litigants says yes, we understand that a court is supposed to be three, but we accept the authority of this one judge to be a court, then that gets around the rule, right? But if one hauls the other into court and there's only one judge and they go through the whole proceeding and then then there's a mistake. So then in that case, Rabbi Avo would say everybody says this was no court in the first place. So and then so if they accepted that one judge is going to be the judge, is going to be a valid judge, so why does he have to pay? Right? He made he served. He should have immunity from he served in an official capacity. Because the Gemara says the Amrulay Dinat London Torah, because what they told him was like you know we accept you as a judge, but you have to apply true Torah law. And since he made a mistake, and didn't, and as we'll see, it's a mistake in Torah law, like in black on white, black letter law, I think they call it. That's why the judge has to pay restitution. Now, what kind of mistake are we talking about? What kind of error? If you want to say that it's a black letter law that a Mishnah says explicitly something and he ruled differently. The Rav Shesha says if that's the kind of mistake, then the decision can't be reversed. It must be that he made a mistake in terms of weighing, a weighted opinion, right? So maybe something is not clear in black letter law, and the judge has to determine how to apply the law here. So it's not explicit, and it's he made a logical error, but not an error in law. So in that case, what kind of logical error are we talking about? It's like if in the sources in the halacha there's different opinions, like two Tanaim disagree, two Amoraim disagree, and the Gemara never established like whom do we rule? The Sugyan di Alma Aliba dechad minayu, but generally we follow one. What we in practice we follow one of those opinions, but it hasn't been said that this is the halacha, right? So and this guy went against the consensus, right? And so that is considered a mistake. That's the mistake we're talking about. So anyway, lemak tanai. Maybe there's a machlokas tanai between Shmuel and Rabbi Avo, right? Whether we say a two-man panel, two-man court is valid or not. Here's a Mishnah, Bitsua Bishlosha. A Bitsua is like a compromise. It actually seems to be like the same thing as Pshara, as we're going to see in the same source. Bitsua and Pshara are treated the same. So Bitsua Bishlosha de Rav Meir says a compromise panel has to be three, just like a regular court. Pshara biyachid can be one person. Svarua, so they thought so they thought like they wanted to say that this is the machlokas between Shmuel and Rabbi Avo, right? Rabbi Meir says it's a three. That's like Rabbi Avo says a two-man court is nothing, and Rabbanan who say even one is okay is like Shmuel. So they thought l'chuli alma makshinam pshar l'din. And so they thought everybody holds that that pshara and din, that compromise and the regular judgment, regular court case have to be the same rules. My lav bakamifli. So maybe this is what we're talking about. Demar savar din b'shlosha. So this argument is about pshara, but if pshara and din have the same rules, then Rabbi Meir says it has to be three. He's like Rabbi Avo, and Rabban Mar savar din b'shnayim, and the Rabbanan who say even one is okay is like Shmuel. So Mar says lo. Everybody agrees that in this argument between Rabbi Meir and Rabbanan, they're only talking about pshara, about compromise. They all agree that a regular court case has to be with three. What are Rabbi Meir and the rabbis arguing about? Everybody agrees about the court cases, but do we apply the same rules to a compromise panel? Right, so according to Rabbi Meir, he says it just like din, it has to be three, and the rabbis say no, different rules. It can be even with one. Lema tlasa tanai b'pshara. Um, so now we're saying, okay, so pshara. So we saw that there was we saw that between that there was a case to be made for three, and a case to be made for two, and a case to be made for one. To be made for one judge. Marsavar b'shlosha. Rav Meir says there has to be three for pshara. Marsavar b'shnayim. Rishon Gamliel says that two is enough, and Marsavar b'yachid. And the rabbis say that a single one is enough, right? So we seem to have three positions. Whereas it's not necessarily Amar Vachaber Rav Ika, Vitema Rav Yerim Bar Shlemia, Mandi Amar Trey Afilu Chadname. Now there's no position that there have to be two, right? If you hold there don't need to be three, it can even be one. So why did he say two? Why did he say two? Because now when the when let's say later somebody's going to dispute and say, no, the judge never ruled like that, and the one judge is going to say, yes, I did, but he's only one person, right? It's better to have two witnesses for something to establish that it occurred, right? So really one judge is enough, but it's better to have two judges so that they can testify about their own judgment, so that there can be proof that the judgment took place. Sorry. Amar Vashi Shmamina. So we learn from Rav Meir, who says that that a compromise has to be with three, just like din. Pshara eina tzricha kinyan. There doesn't have to be a kinyan. Like when two people submit to an arbitration panel, they don't have to commit themselves formally in the sense of a kinyan, right? And that each gives something to the other. Let's say as a representative of their acceptance of the eventual judgment. But since Rabbi Meir says, one second, if you say it does need a kinyan, Laman diamar tzricha tlasa lamali. If there's three, what do you need? Why do you need that many? Tiske betray. There should be two. Let them make a kinyan, right? So if you're, it shows you that if there had to be a kinyan, then the kinyan would be sufficient to oblige the parties to abide by the ruling, right? So it must be that there's no kinyan, and that's why you need to have three. Otherwise, why would you need to have three? Vilchus up kinyan, and the halacha is that you do need a kinyan, even if it's even if it's a court of three, you still need a kinyan. And Tosfos explains why. So that you shouldn't claim that the kinyan was made under false pretenses. So it would be like an asmachta. So that's why you need the three to make it official. Just as a regular court has to be three people, compromise is the same. Nigmar adin, once they complete the case, no more compromise, right? Like once the verdict has been handed down, then it's too late to say, oh, I want arbitration, right? No, you've gone through the whole case, the court ruled, then you have to stick with what the court rules. Rabbi Lazar says, I don't like this compromise thing. You can't compromise. You have to submit to judgment, to din, to a beis din. If you compromise, you're a sinner. And somebody who praises the compromiser, he's blaspheming. This is what the pasuk means. One who praises a botzea has cursed God. So, botzea is kind of a funny word to use for compromise. Really, what it means in the context is somebody who steals, right, or who's betza is profit. I think it would be a good translation. So someone who profits, improperly, that's what it's talking about. But since we're using the word botzea as compromise, so we're interpreting this verse as compromise as bad. Ella yikavad in sahar. Rather, let the judgment pierce the mountain. In other words, you have to stand up strongly. Justice is immutable and which has to be incorruptible. None of this compromise business. Shanam, ours says
for lechem too, don't you? This in
No, that's true.
In
Yes,
the
that's
kitchen,
right.
and other places, Mishnah, they say botzei alechem.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point. So then you're like cutting the bread, right, or breaking it into two. That seems more related to the idea of compromise. Um, Shenamar ki hamishpat Elohim, who God justice belongs to God. So just as God is unchanging and the ultimate truth and so on, um, justice has to be the same. V'chein Moshe Yomer Yikov Adin Sahar. This was Moshe's idea, or Moshe's the way Moshe conducted himself, strictly justice. Aval Aaron Olev Shalom v'Olev Shalom, but his brother Aaron was lover of peace and chaser of peace. Umesim Shalom ben Elam Chavero, and he brought peace between people. Shenemar Torah is a pasuk from Malachi, referring to Aaron HaKohen. Torah Samasaisa Befiu v'Avlo Lonim Seif B'Sasav. The Torah of truth was on his lips, and his and evil was not on his lips. For Rabbi Meshiv B'Shalom Mishar Halachiti, he walked with me, God, with peace and being Mishar is what. Being upright, V'Rabim Heshiv Me'avon, and turned a lot of people away from sin. Okay, so that was Rabbi Lazar, very uncompromising position. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, but a different Rabbi Eliezer says, Haresha Gazel Sashel Chitim, somebody steals wheat, a barrel of wheat, a bushel of wheat. Utchana Vafa V'Hifrish Mimena Chala, and he ground it and he baked it and he separated challah. Kesed Mavarich, how can you make a bracha on the challah? Ein ze mevarich elaminites. This is not a blessing. This is blasphemous. Using the same verse. That is not blessing God. It's cursing God.
Reminds me of the thing about the stolen etrog,
Yeah.
a mitzvah haba
A
be'erer.
mitzvah b'avera. Yes, exactly. Rameir has
Lulav.
another way of looking at this pasuk. Lo nemar botzea el keneged Yehuda. Who's it talking about? Yehuda. What profit will there be if we kill our brother Yosef? If you praise Yehuda for that action, that's actually blasphemous. Right, we're linking that terms botzea and betza that Yehuda used. Now, so that was one view that definitely go with strict justice. Rabbi Yeshua ben Kfar mitzvah livtzoa. No, it's a mitzvah to compromise. Shnamar emes v'mishpat shalom shiftu b'sharechem. Judge truth and judgment and peace in your gates. How can you have truth, justice, and peace? Right? They're opposites. Um, Justice determines, you're right and you're wrong. That's kind of the opposite of shalom. Ella ezu mishpat sheyesh bo shalom. What is justice that has within it peace? Havei omer ze bitzua. That's compromise. V'chein b'David hu omer. Vayhi David osa mishpat tzedakah. It says about David HaMelech, he did justice and tzedakah and righteousness. They're opposites. Ella ezu mishpat sheyesh bo tzedakah. Havei omer ze bitzua. We're talking about compromise. So he likes compromise. Asan Tanakama. Now we come back to the Tanakama. Rabbi Elazar ben Yossi Aglili is saying no compromise. Um, like how would he explain this pasuk about David? Once that the judgment was carried out, was sealed, and you see, okay, I ruled, for party A and against party B, but party B is poor, right? Now what are we going to do, right? Like maybe he really is liable for the money, but he doesn't have money. V'shila won't be told pesos. So the judge or David, as the judge, would go and pay the judgment himself from his own pocket. Zeh mishpat tzedakah. There you have both. You have mishpat because the court ruling was correct, and you have tzedakah in the sense that you took pity on the poor guy who now owes money that he doesn't have, and you paid. Mishpat lozeh tzedakah lozeh. Everybody gets what they need. The one that deserves the judgment in his favor got it, and the one that is suffering from lack of funds, he's satisfied as well. Um, Mishpat lezeh sheyachzir lo mamon, mishpat tzaka lezeh sheshila mamon tech beso. Kashalei Rabbi. So Rabbi had a problem with this. Ha l'chol amo.
David Omer, he David also mishpat tzedakah l'chol
This is this may or may not be, but it's just recapping, right? Judgment for the one that won the case. So and tzedakah for the one who had to pay, but he didn't have the funds, so now he's being made. So he's his expenses are covered, his liability is covered. Now, Kashalei Rabbi. Rabbi had a question on this. Hi l'chol amo. It says lanim in Vaile. So it says that David did this mishpat and tzedakah for everybody, but not everybody is poor. Not everybody who loses a court case is poor. So why are you just interpreting this against what it says in the pasuk? You're interpreting this that this only applies to the poor. It seems to apply to everybody. So how do you explain mishpat and tzedakah? Ella Rabbi Omer. So even if David did not pay the judgments from his own money, this is how it's both mishpat and tzedakah. Mishpat l'zeh tzedakah l'zeh. Mishpat l'zeh shechzir lo. The one who won the judgment, he's satisfied because he gets justice. U'tzedakah l'zeh shehotzi gzeila mitachas yado. You see it as disadvantageous for the poor person who loses the case, but really you're doing him a favor, because if you had ruled unjustly, then he would be keeping money that doesn't belong to him, stolen funds, right? So by the fact that you ruled properly, you're actually doing him a favor, that he escapes the being a thief, basically. So you're actually doing him a favor with strict justice.
So who's paying the cost of the poor person then?
No, even if the poor person pays, then you're still doing him a favor.
Well, we said he didn't have money, so who's paying for him now?
I don't know. He takes out a loan. I don't know how he pays.
Oh, okay. So
he has a payment plan. I don't know, but however he pays, but he's he's off the hook for having somebody else's property in his possession. Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe Omer. Shnaim shabom ufanecha ladin. Two people come to you. You're the judge. Two people come to you for judgment. Ashlo tishma divrein, o misha tishma divrein v'iyata yodei lahechan din note. Either before you heard their arguments, or you've heard them but you haven't decided yet. You don't know. You haven't done your research yet. At rashai lomer lahen tzu bitzu. At that point, you can still say, you know what, you guys should go compromise. What do you need a court case for? Just go and work it out so that everybody's happy or everybody's unhappy. But once you hear their arguments and you know how the case is going to come out based on their arguments, you know what the law is, even though you haven't ruled, now it's too late to say to them, go and compromise. Shneimar poter mayim reshis madon v'lifnei hisgala hariv netosh. You release water at the beginning of judgment, and before it's the argument is revealed, you should get rid of it. You should uproot it. Right. In other words, the compromise can only be before things happen, before the case kind of takes place. So in other words, before the argument is revealed, you can still uproot the argument by compromise. Mishatigla, Mishanisgala, Hariv, but once the case is revealed, and it's revealed to you, I guess, how it's going to come out, then it's too late for compromise. Reish Lakish says, two people come to you for judgment. Echad rach ve'echad kasha. One is gentle and the other is difficult. Before you hear their arguments, or once you hear their arguments, but before you know which way the case is going to go, you can say to them, I don't want to be the judge in this case. Because you're afraid, right? You don't want to judge the case because you might rule against the difficult guy, and then he's gonna persecute you, right? You're afraid. But Misha Tishma Divrei Ve'ata Yodei Lehinchan Adin Nota. But once you've heard the case and you know how it's going to come out, you can't withdraw from the case. Because a judge can't be afraid. You can't be afraid of the litigants. Right. So before you know anything about the case, you're not really the judge in the sense that you have this command. But once you know what the story is, you can't withdraw because of fear.
The sense of this, as we're reading this, seems like that this the Shachavatari is Yachid, but we've had this
Yeah.
machloket earlier that it's whether it's Yachid or Shlosha Shadanim, right? So I mean, I'm just a little bit. Are we taking a pasak one way or the other, whether it's a Dayan Yachid or Shlosha Dayanim here? I'm just curious here. The way this we're reading this, it seems like and then if one were to withdraw, if he could, then you still got two left on the panel, right? You bring in another one. Just
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it as a problem. It sounds like if one of the judges is afraid, then he can withdraw. Yes, would they have to replace him? So then you get into the question of whether two is sufficient or not. If it's not sufficient, you'd have to replace him.
no, I understand, but that's the sort of aside. But it seems like the whole Shachnavataria is speaking b'yachid. All the last three
Yeah,
four
okay. I
cases,
mean,
or is that lav dafka?
yeah, well, I think it's lavdafka. I think it's directed toward each judge, even if there have to be three judges. This is directed to each judge. If you're afraid, if it's early on enough in the case, you can withdraw, and maybe they'll have to replace you. Rishubin Karcha Omer, Minayin Lil Talmid Shiyoshu Lifnei Rabbo V'Ra Zechus La'ani V'Chova La'asher. What if you're a judge and your Rebbe is there? And I assume he's on the judges panel as well. And you see, that the poor guy is going to be proved right, and the rich guy is going to be proved wrong. I mean, you shouldn't hold your tongue, right? You should, even in the presence of your Rebbe, you should say what you think. It says, don't be afraid of anybody. So Rabbi Chanina Omer, and Rabbi Chanina interprets this as Lo sachnis v'recha mipnei ish. Don't hold back your words, your opinion, because of a man, meaning your teacher. Right. So just because your rabbi is there, if you're a judge, you have to say what you think. V'yehu edim yodim asmi hein meidin. More things about the court case. Witnesses should know about, like, whose law they're testifying about, meaning God's law, lifnei mihen min, and before whom they're testifying, God, umi asid lipar mehen, and who's going to punish them if they lie. Because it says in discussing the litigation process, the Torah says the two people who have a disagreement stand before God, right? So everything in the court should be understood to be in God's presence. And the judges too, they have to know whose law they're adjudicating, and before whom, in whose presence, and who will, before whom they are responsible for their judgment. Shenemar Elohim Nitzav Ba'adasel. God is standing in the congregation of El can also mean judges. So the Chaim Yehoshaphat Omer said about Yehoshaphat, Vayomer LaShoftim Ruma Atem Osim Ki Lo La'Adam Tishpetu Ki L'Hashem. He said to the judges, like, pay attention to what you're doing. You're not just judging people; you're judging God's law. Shema Yomar Hadayan Mali B'tzar Zeh. So, like, what if a judge says, "What do I need this trouble for?" Like, if everything is before God, this is very dangerous work, right? Like, the stakes are high. Talmud Lomar v'imachem bidvar mishpat. It also says that God is with you in things of having to do with justice. Ein lo dayan el masha ein abros. In other words, Listen, you can only do what you can do. You can only do the way you see fit, right? If you have integrity and you rule honestly, then you don't have to worry about being called to account for it. Okay. I think this is a good place to stop for today, and we will pick it up here tomorrow.
So that includes then what we learned earlier, right? That איך אני רוצה להגיד? Where the judge makes a mistake and the two people brought him to court, said, we accept your dayan, but if you make a mistake in Torah law, we're going to hold you to it.
Yes, but here we're talking about like, your moral issues, right? Like your how shall I say, your
Yes,
your fear of God. Like that's two different aspects of this. Right? Yes, sure. There's a liability there monetarily. If you really blow it, you're on the hook. Okay. That doesn't go away. But the thing that you're, culpable before God, should you make a mistake. So Gemara is telling you, as long as you're honest and have integrity, God will understand if you make a mistake, if you're doing it with integrity, right? Like everybody makes mistakes. You're not going to be punished for that. So from that perspective, you don't have to worry. But yeah, you still have to worry that if you really blow it, you're on the hook monetarily. It's a balance, right? I mean, you want people with integrity to be judges, but you don't want to give them license to, to even unintentionally pervert actual justice. Okay, we'll pick it up here tomorrow. Thank you, everybody.